Jai Guru Maharaj ki Jai. Jai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. So I'd like to welcome all the devotees. Thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to seek your blessings and your good wishes so that we can conclude the lessons that we are trying to imbibe into our lives from the Bhagavad Gita. Today we look at the lessons from the 18th chapter so that we can please the Supreme Personality of Godhead with our endeavor of trying to improve our consciousness, improve our lives so that we can head towards the spiritual world. So it's the final chapter, glorious chapter, of course. Four key lessons here. First one is Krishna describes the 5 factors of action, and we want to try to understand what these 5 factors of action are and what is our role as one of those factors. So Krishna describes about what are these 5 factors: individual soul, that's us; the body, the senses, that's material nature; the endeavor, the effort; and the sanctioner, supreme soul. So it's not that when something is done, we are the only doer. No, there are other doers. Our role in the action is a role of desire, because actually material nature through the body and senses and the devatas actually make the action take place, and it's sanctioned by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So important to understand these 5 factors, and here we've just outlined them somewhat. Devam, the super soul, as we said before, sanctions everything. Then we have the body, place of action. We have the senses. We have the doer, but the doer is in the sense of the desire. And then we have the effort, the material cause. So these 5 are key in any action that takes place. We shouldn't think that we are the cause of everything. We're not. We're a very small part. We're an important part, because if it wasn't for the original desire, then the action wouldn't take place in the first place. So obviously important, but it shouldn't be that we're the only doer. We are responsible for every success that we have, and of course any failure is somebody else's fault. No, we are one of the parties involved in the action. So that should reduce our ego, in the sense that we should not be taking credit for everything that's going on in our life, because actually a big part is played by material nature, by the devatas, by the Supreme Lord as Paramatma. So we shouldn't think that we're the doers of everything. The false ego should be restrained somewhat in that sense. So that's an important lesson to learn. Bhagavad Gita is the only philosophical book which actually explains this. And it's a very subtle point, and many devotees even miss this point. But Krishna has explained this throughout the Gita. He explains it in several places that we are not the doer. We are one of the causes of action. So there's another verse, let me just read it actually. I think it's 327, Prakriti Kriyamanani. He explains, the spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the 3 modes of material nature. He's very frank that spirit soul is bewildered by false ego, thinking he's the doer of every activities, but actually they're carried out by material nature. So very important point. Second lesson to take from these 18th chapter is where Krishna describes in little detail how the modes influence our knowledge, our actions, our understanding, our determination, ultimately our happiness, sense of happiness. And he explains this point that what seems like poison in the beginning, we can become nectar in the end. That is the spiritual path, where when we begin our spiritual progress, it seems so hard. Why do I have to chant? The mind is just completely against the idea. It seems like poison. Krishna says this in 37th text. That which in the beginning may be just like poison, but at the end is just like nectar, and which awakens one to self-realization, is said to be happiness in the mode of goodness. So we shouldn't be too worried if we are feeling, wow, this spiritual process is very difficult and I cannot adjust to it. That's almost a natural reaction, because we've spent life after life controlled by the mind. Now we're trying to control the mind. Mantra means trying to control the mind. So the mind will protest and it will make everything look like poison. But as Krishna says, if it's in connection with self-realization, that poison will turn into nectar at the end. So we have to try to learn this, understand this. What seems like poison in the beginning will become nectar in the end. And Krishna goes on. What is nectar at first turns into poison later. And that's in the mode of passion. So what does that mean? We can give an example for say, eating a gulab jamun. You eat one gulab jamun, nice. 2 gulab jamuns, not too bad. 3 gulab jamuns, coming up to saturation point. 4th gulab jamun, you'll be sick. And the 5th, you would not want to even see it. So nectar in the beginning, poison in the end. So, and then he also talks about that happiness, which is poison in the beginning, poison at the end. So perhaps somebody who likes to drink alcohol, it's poison in the beginning, it's poison at the end. So if we're feeling a little bit that we are struggling in spiritual life, don't worry, that's natural. Persevere. Poison in the beginning will turn into nectar at the end. So that's a very, very nice lesson. Krishna really gives a very beautiful, practical lesson there. I think everybody goes through this at some point in their spiritual life. Third lesson is Varnashram system. Krishna is explaining the different qualities of the different Varnas. The Varnas are Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. And he's describing the different qualities that are attached to each of those 4 Varnas. And he's saying for the Brahmins, it's peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. These are the natural qualities by which the Brahman works. The Kshatriyas, heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity, and leadership, natural qualities by which the Kshatriyas live. And then for the Vaishya, the business class, the farming, cow protection, business. And for the Shudra, it's service to others, the labor class. So we should understand how we fit in, what is our nature, and how we can serve the Lord with our nature. Whether one has a Shudra mentality or a Brahman mentality, it doesn't matter. Our nature is our nature. We're born with it. It's inherent in us. What matters is we use that nature in the service of the Lord. And we can, thankfully, dovetail any nature towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead and do Bhakti Yoga. So all we have to do is understand where do we fit. And of course, we can take the help of senior devotees, of Guru Maharaj, spiritual master, so that he can guide us. Because in this age of Kali Yuga, everything's a little bit mixed up. It's said that actually there's only Shudras in Kali Yuga. And we can probably understand that comment quite easily. So, and that's not a bad thing. If we are in the mood of service, and actually Krishna consciousness will be a very natural engagement for us, because Krishna consciousness is Das nu das nu das, servant of the servant of the servant. So we obviously have our obligations and duties in our lives according to our the circumstances we're born into. We don't neglect those duties, we conduct those duties, but at the same time, those are called Swadharma duties. At the same time, not forgetting our Sanatan Dharma, eternal duty towards the Supreme Lord by engaging in his service. So this is quite interesting, very interesting to understand where are we in terms of the Varnashram system, how it applies to us, and how we can dovetail it into Krishna consciousness. It takes a little bit of thought, a little bit of thinking, and we should apply whatever's our natural propensity. For example, if one asked a Brahmin, a natural Brahmin, to go and collect 100,000 pounds to build a temple, he would struggle. You ask him to find a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, and that would be his natural sort of situation. He'd be very happy to do that. Similarly, if you ask a Vaish to find a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, a businessman, he'd struggle. But if you ask him to go and collect 100,000 pounds, he would love it. He would love to do that. So his nature is that way. It doesn't mean the Brahmin nature is superior to the Vaish. No, if used in Krishna's service, they're on an equal platform. So that's number 3. And then the 4th one is to understand the philosophy. Understand the philosophy, live the philosophy, spread the philosophy. Because Krishna explains so beautifully in the final theme of the Bhagavad Gita, so many nectarian verses are there. He's questioning Arjun, have you understood what I've told you? He's also instructing him, and Prabhupada actually gives a very beautiful point in the purport. The most confidential part of knowledge is that one become a pure devotee of Krishna and always think of him and act for him. One should not become an official meditator. Life should be so molded that one will always have the chance to think of Krishna. One should act in such a way that all his daily activities are in connection with Krishna. He should arrange his life in such a way that throughout the 24 hours, he cannot help but think of Krishna. And the Lord's promise is that anyone who is in such pure Krishna consciousness will certainly return to the abode of Krishna, where he will be engaged in the association of Krishna face to face. So Krishna explains in 1855, Bhaktyamam Abhijanat, he says, one can only understand me as I am by pure devotional service. And when one has understood him in that way, he will return back to the kingdom of God. So many verses he explains different things towards the end. Engage your mind, always think of me, become my devotee. Manmana bhava mat bhakto, worship me, offer your homage to me. That way you will come to me. You are. And then finally he says 1866, Sarva Dharma Parityaja, give up all variety of religion, surrender unto me, I'll protect you no matter what. But I find the next verse, next couple of verses after that, more important. And that is, yes, understand the philosophy, yes, live the philosophy, but actually the most important thing is spread the philosophy. So have the understanding, live it, for sure. But if we just keep it to ourselves, something's missing. Spread it. And that's where Krishna says to Arjuna, for one who explains this supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed. And at the end, he will come back to me. So if we share this knowledge with others, pure devotional service is guaranteed. Don't have to do anything else. Don't have to work harder. Don't have to do any other endeavor. And then the following verse, Krishna really drives the point home. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. So we got a huge treasure that Guru Maharaj, Prabhupada, and the Lord has given us, this wonderful Sanatana Dharma. So our duty is to first understand the philosophy, make sure we understand it, and then put it into practice, live it, and then give it to others. When you got something so valuable, we share it with others. We share it with everyone. It's the most amazing philosophy. So that was the final lesson that we had given for chapter 18. Krishna then explains he asks Arjuna a question. Have you understood what I've told you? And you can now decide what you want to do. And Arjuna is emphatic. Yes, I will do what you say. I will carry on. I will take on your mission. And then Sanjay is glorifying Arjuna and Krishna. So I wanted to end there. I wanted to ask Madhusudan Prabhu, would you like to share your realizations, please?
Haribol, Hare Krishna, Nabi.
Hare Krishna.
Hi, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj. And again, once we've come to the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18. And again, these lessons, here are very important. And I think when you earlier on mentioned that, people think they are the doers, but then the action performed by the three modes of material nature, would one get confused a little bit thinking, well, I did do that act, of whatever the act might be. And then it wasn't me. I didn't do it. It was just material natures and the demigods making me do it.
Not my fault.
It's not my fault. Like in Africa, they go to the court and say, "Did you kill that person?" And he says, "Sujui," "Sujui" meaning I don't know. And plead ignorance that way, thinking, I didn't know I did it, I think I was in a sleep, or something like that. So how does one overcome that kind of understanding, when things are supposed to have been done, well, where do their responsibilities come in? But quite intricate, but we are encouraged, well, not encouraged, but the instructions basically are that you've got to perform your actions, but not remain attached to the results of the actions. And modes of material nature will make you act in certain ways, obviously, because if you are in the mode of ignorance, and then, certain material nature and will take over, anger, pride, starting with shame, greed, all these things will predominate at times and think, we've done it through all these sort of things, Then, like I was saying yesterday, out of anger, somebody can actually do some act, which they later on regret, but realize, wasn't really, I didn't really mean to do it, So it's quite intricate, but Bhagavad Gita, in the 18th chapter, Krishna starts here with explaining what tyaga is, renunciation, which is in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance, And tyagis, you can be a tyagi in a mode of ignorance and passion, and then even to a certain extent, a mode of goodness. But the real sannyasi is like Arjun's, Arjun is made to act on the battlefield, but still remain like a sannyasi, I'm not attached to all the actions and the reactions of these, because in the grand scheme of things, Krishna is playing a role within this. But yeah, the lessons are quite important, where we have to give this knowledge to others whenever possible. And if that instruction wasn't there, then Prabhupada would not have been given the instruction by his own spiritual master as well, that this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita is timeless, and it doesn't, it is not under some sort of control of material conditions. India doesn't have to be free from any kind of rule or anything like that. Time, circumstances are right. Now the time is right for Bhagavad Gita. No, this teaching is necessary for humanity at all times, and it will be, and it's needed, and it's necessary, whether it's Donald Trump is going to be the president, or coronavirus is going to be around or not, or whatever, but the knowledge is necessary under all time circumstances. So as this illusion that Prabhupada had was dispelled by his own Guru Maharaj, and as a result, he took that as an instruction, and then he did the most wonderful job of coming out of Bharat. And we looked into his life as to how he did it, and it came to America and gave this knowledge, even though Bhagavad Gita was around, but nobody clearly understood the message within it, because nobody was willing to deliver Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. They can give their own interpretations and philosophies. But Prabhupada quite distinctly said, this is Bhagavad Gita as it is delivered by Krishna, and as it is understood by Arjuna. And here is Arjuna out of illusion now. So, in that mood and in that fashion, we are to be understanding Bhagavad Gita and take on the Supreme Personality as our guide in our life, understanding our position within the Varna and the ashrams. And then as it applies, keep on learning, keep on studying these lessons from Bhagavad Gita, keep reading, and understand. And as a spirit soul, we're not the body. This is the only text in the whole education system that comes to a point where it says, you're not the body, you're the spirit soul. And this is the spiritual concepts, spiritual life, spiritual whatever. And that's where it starts, So this is where it starts. Even the topmost psychologists, they only study up to the mind, you're not the body, but you're the mind, but they don't fully understand the mind as well. So anyway, this is, my realizations, and I hope that we keep reviewing these lessons every time, and keep coming back to it more and more, and keep applying in our life. That's the most important thing. So thank you again for giving me a chance to comment on Bhagavad Gita.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. It's really good. Really good. Anybody like to add anything or ask any question? Anything that your experience you'd like to share? Perhaps these lessons are a little too demanding, hard, can't really put into practice, or too easy to put into practice.
Hi,
Pitamba.
how are you?
Good, yeah, you?
Fantastic. Fantastic. Yes. We were talking about the ego and that it believes it's the doer, you know. I've read other Upanishads, and what they've declared is that there are two faults of the ego. One of them is it considers itself the doer, and the other one is it considers itself the enjoyer, bhokta and karta. So I just thought I'd mention that, because around the ego, that enjoying part, the enjoyer, you know, I'm doing and hence I'm enjoying, you know, they're quite very strongly related.
Good point. Yeah, absolutely right. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. So how have you found these sessions?
I think they're brilliant, because what it is you keep going through the different relevant chapters. Like, I've totally forgotten that in chapter 18, Krishna talks about the Varnashram system, because you tend to focus on the earlier chapters quite a lot. And, you know, with chapter 18, I went, oh yeah, Krishna did say that about, you know, so I just think it's brilliant. And, you know, to be honest, there can never be enough revision and reinforcement of the ideas of spirituality of the Bhagavad Gita and what Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada have preached. Thank you.
And have you found these lessons, are you able to actually put any of them into practice? I mean, it always takes time. I do understand that, to absorb and then apply it to ourselves. Have you found any that you can take on easily?
I'll be totally honest with you. I just tend to focus on my chanting a lot, you know, and keeping abominable actions far distance from me, and trying to do as much spiritual activities as I can. So that's where I kind of, and together with all the backup of, you know, what we study and read, you know, whether it's talking about Radharani, or whether it's talking about the avatars, or whether it's talking about certain personalities, appearance days and disappearance days, you know. But I would say that transcendental knowledge is transcendental knowledge, that if I'm doing all these things, I'm only going to get better. You know, oh, I could improve on this area, I can improve on this area, etc. You know.
Yeah, no, that's good. No, thank you for sharing that.
And I'll be sorry. And Pitamba, when you mentioned about the false ego is what keeps us in this identity at the moment, that, you know, I'm a particular body, I'm a particular nationality, and certain identity. And quite rightly, we need to have that, because we take a birth within certain family, we're given a name, we get an identity as we go through our education system that gets ingrained in it properly. And then you start to think, you know, now I can become, you know, I can become this, that, you know, I'm a husband, wife, this. And then the false ego is a very subtle kind of thing that is hard to give up to start with. And the ego to develop that, yeah, you know, I am a servant of Krishna. I'm not the master of anything here, really. And I can never be a master of anything. It's only an illusion to think that, you know, I'm the boss and I'm the, you know, king, queen, president, this, that, whatever position we kind of hold. But we have to kind of carry on with that identity. And then the false ego is very subtle as well, because, you know, it's very dangerous at times. That, you know, you think you come on a spiritual path, and then the ego starts to, it doesn't want to give up, you see. It's like an animalistic ego. And quite rightly, you know, we've carried that ego for a long time, and it's quite animalistic in nature, so it hangs on, just like the mind hangs on. False ego wants to hang on to it. Why do you want to give your identity? I mean, suddenly, you know, if somebody said, you know, you watch that film, so I mean, some films anyway, you know, the moment won't come to my mind, but where the guy doesn't remember his previous life or something, and he looks at a passport and says, was that me, really? And then he's trying to find out who he really is, you know, and then he finds out that he's actually a, what's that film, you know, it's quite famous films, you know, there were quite a series of them. And he was an agent and an assassin, you know, and all sorts of things. And then he finds out that's who he really is. That kind of ego is gone, but he's still acquired. The animalistic nature is still there. But the other side of the coin is that, you know, you start to become thinking, oh, I'm now on a spiritual path. So, you know, I'm so holy and I'm so pure and and you suddenly start to have this persona of some gurus that go around, you know, like the guy in Punjab side, you know, he was a big guru influence on so many people, you know, and they had to raid his place, you know. I think the government and police army had to go in. It acquired so much wealth because he abused that position as well. And then that's what happens, you know, you can, even within our own kind of association, sometimes you think, oh, I'm so pure, I'm holy, I'm a pure devotee, you know, don't touch me. And the Brahmins, the thing, we are the Brahmins, you know, we are the untouchables. Oh, you are untouchables, you know, don't touch us, don't come near me. This sort of thing, you know, as behavior starts to creep in. And then you start to think, oh, I'm holier than the holiest. He's the biggest false ego's weapon. So you're so pure, you're so holy, you're the biggest, purest devotee ever around. And that's a dangerous position as well. But that's where humility comes in. Prabhupada did so much, but he was still so humble. And through his nature and his personality, we will understand how the false ego can play a role as well.
That's good. Indulekha, you'd like to say something?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Very nice explanation and very nice recapitulation of the Bhagavad Gita. But the Gita is something that every time we read it, we find something new. Yes. Every time, even we have read it for so many times. So first, I think we should read and the association of senior devotees and understand, relish, imbibe in our life, and then try to share. Because every time, and then what I would suggest, I usually suggest to my friends who ask me, I would say, start by chapter 2, because if you tell somebody who is not Krishna consciousness, who doesn't know anything about the Bhagavad Gita, he will feel confused reading the first chapter. So if you start with the second chapter, usually I will start by explaining the chapter 2, verse 23, and then I will tell them to start from here and talk about the soul and reincarnation. And some people will just go to chapter 18, Sarva Dharman Parityaja. So what is a person understanding here? So your approach is very good. You started from the beginning. And again, to all the devotees who are listening, try to read again. We will find something new every time you read it. That's
right. Absolutely right. Absolutely. It's not a one-off study. It's actually a continuous journey. Absolutely right.
The more we teach others, the more we learn, and we purify ourselves, our tongue, our Vani, our speech. We purify, right?
I completely accept that point. I've learned more from this than I can ever imagine. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. Sunita, are you there today?
I'm here.
Oh, great.
Krishna, I'm here, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I just wanted to sort of address your question because I think we got a little time. So let me see if we can do it. This is the basic principles of Hinduism. This is very basic. I mean, it's a lot more complex than this, but in essence, this is correct. One God, many, many names. That one God has many names. Like Krishna, Rama, Allah, Christ. They're all names of that one God. But this one God also has many different forms. Krishna, Rama, Vishnu, unlimited forms. Narayan, Nrsimha, Vaman, so many different forms, millions and millions and millions of forms.
Yeah.
They're each as powerful as each other. And then we have something called the Brahman, which is the formless aspect of God. This is the sunshine, the effulgence coming from God. So some people in Hinduism, many people in Hinduism make the mistake of thinking that this Brahman is the ultimate aspect of God. Actually, it's not. It's one of the aspects of the Lord, but the Brahman is dependent on the personal form of the Lord, the personal form. So people identify themselves that, we worship Brahman, or we want to become one with Brahman, i.e. we want to become one with God. We want to become God. So that's a very risky philosophy. We can never become God. We are always his devotee. And then there's God's little helpers. Now, in that category are the devatas. Lord Shiva, Ganesh, Hanuman. Shiva is a little different category, but we'll talk about him in a minute.
Okay.
Lord Brahma is also in this category, the creator of our world. He's regarded to be a demigod. And then there's us, living entities. And yes, Jayanti just made a point that there's 33 million demigods who help God administer the world. Just like in this world.
Okay.
We have a crap prime minister, I have to say.
He's doing his best.
Of course, I shouldn't be making such value judgments. But anyway, we have a prime minister who's appointed. He was appointed by the Queen. Of course, he won the election, but if he doesn't get appointed by the Queen, he cannot take the position of prime minister. Appointed by the Queen, and then he himself appointed a cabinet, treasury, defense, home, etc., etc. In the same way, God, Krishna, appoints a prime minister. Here he is, Lord Brahma. He creates this world. And then he has, God has, many other very powerful servants. These are all positions which are held by very powerful servants of the Lord. But because they're so powerful, sometimes they are mistaken to be the Supreme Lord themselves. But they're not. Lord Shiva's category is somewhat different because he's in a category of his own. When Krishna wants to touch this world, he transforms as Shiva. So there's, in one sense, no difference between Shiva and Krishna. Just like there's no difference between milk products of milk and yogurt. In one sense, there's no difference because they're both milk products. But in another sense, they're very different. So when a curding agent is added to milk, it becomes yogurt. So when the material world is added to Krishna, if you like, he becomes Shiva. So he's different and he's same at the same time. So that's his position.
So is it one of the same? Is Shiva and Krishna, can they be one of the same thing, or is it only when that it applies to the earth?
No, actually, in the spiritual world, Shiva is present as Shambhu. So in that state, there is no material contamination at all. But when he comes in this world, because he has the role of destruction, but he actually has a much bigger role than just destruction. He's the greatest Vaishnav. He's the greatest devotee. Anybody who has been rejected by everybody, Lord Shiva will give that person shelter. He's the kindest soul. So he has a lot more function than just destruction. But because he's in touch with Maya, that makes him a little different from Krishna. But it doesn't mean he's in Maya. He's not. He's the greatest Vaishnav. But he still becomes somewhat different. He has his own category called Shiva Tattva. Nobody can become Shiva Tattva. We can become Brahma as living entities. We can attain that position by our tapasya and our penances. But one can never attain the position of Shiva nor Krishna because they are categories in themselves.
Okay.
Go on, say it.
Yeah.
Go on.
Okay. Oh, I was just going to say that apart from Shiva, all the other entities or these cabinet ministers of Krishna also get destroyed when the world get destroyed, and they go back. So they're like us, but more, or just have some more abilities.
Okay.
And this is a nice picture which shows Krishna as a center, and then we got Hanuman, their old servants, Ganesh, Durga Mata. She's the superintendent of this world. She's the prison house gatekeeper.
Okay.
She doesn't let anybody out. She's a great servant of the Lord. Only if they are pure devotees will she help them leave this world. And she's the wife of Lord Shiva.
Oh, Shiva, yeah. Things like soon is going to be Navratri with the Durga and the 9 matas. And that's still celebrated in next month or so.
Yes,
for Durga. Yeah,
it is. It's a little bit misrepresented. The way Durga Mata should be respected and worshipped, if one likes to worship her, is you are a great devotee of the Lord. I would like you to also give me the blessings to become a devotee of the Lord. That is the proper mood of prayer. Let me attain Krishna. Even the gopis, they were so close to Krishna, but they used to pray to Katyani,
Another form.
who's another form of Durga.
yeah.
Let me have Krishna as my husband. That was fine. And that's what we're saying. Let us become objects of worship. Let us worship Krishna. Let us become, let him be our worshipable object. So we can pray to Durga if one wants to, but it shouldn't be. Generally, the prayer to Durga is, give me money, give me a husband, give me a wife, give me a house, give me a car. Same with Ganesh. The usual prayer to Ganesh and to Shiva is, well, I want wealth. And they're very kind. They will give wealth. But Krishna explains in the 7th chapter and the 9th chapter that whatever the demigods give you, it comes from me. And whatever they give you is temporary and is limited. And one who prays to the demigods, they will go to the demigods, but the demigods are still in this world. But if one prays to me, they will come back to me in the spiritual kingdom, which is out of this world. So that's the clear message of the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah. This picture is very clear. The first time I've seen sort of like the illustration like this, I can picture this in my mind now with Krishna's in the middle and everybody's around him. But I've seen like Saraswati for, I won't take anybody's time, just very quickly, I know you've got to get on. Saraswati Mata like for studying, for learning. Shiva was like, Lord Shiva, people used to play like in Mauritius, people pray for a husband, to get a husband for Shiva. Sort of like Ganesh is like the first person you say,
removing obstacles
before you say the prayers. That's how I've been brought up to believe,
But that's correct. That's correct. But if we do it for our material pleasure, our material senses, then our prayer is like a business transaction. I'll pray to you, you give me. Bhakti is not a business. It's a question of love, question of the heart comes in. And that's why it is recommended when we approach these personalities, there's no harm in approaching them in the right mood, that you are great devotees of Lord Krishna, Lord Vishnu. Please also guide me in that direction so that we can perform bhakti, which is selfless, no motivation. We just want to please the Lord. And that mood takes us out of this world and into the spiritual world.
Okay, so from what I've said, it seems like, what we've been taught is like the material, praying for the material world rather than the spiritual world. Okay, it's sort of sinking in. Yeah.
Exactly. No, it's because it's a lifetime of conditioning. You know
Sure,
what
yeah. Mm.
to do. It's a different mindset, but Bhagavad Gita is very clear. You know, so clear that if you pray for material things, you'll get them, but you stay in this world. But if you pray for him, if you understand Krishna's birth, his activities, you don't come back to this world when you leave this body. It's very clear. Clear.
Okay.
And it's very, it's amazing actually. It's fantastic, to be honest. It's the most amazing thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for
So just another thing on Navratra, it's also Vaishnavas also remember Ram at that time, because it's the battle between Ram and Ravan,
yes.
leading up to Vijay Dasmi.
Good.
So Vaishnavas, sometimes read the Ramayana at that in that period as well.
Yeah.
Good point. Well done.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, questions? Sunita, was that okay, by the way?
That's fine. It's okay. It's just for me to sink in now, because I'm probably thinking on the material side of the prayers. So maybe I have to sort of rethink and reschedule things. And
it takes a while, and I'm sure you will have many more questions. And don't be surprised if you do. And always ask.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you so much.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Hope I didn't confuse you too much.
No.
It is a big mind shift, by the way.
It is. Yeah, especially with this picture, it really helps, the illustration.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So that's a conclusion for the Bhagavad Gita. I'd like to thank all the devotees. At some point, I think Sanjana was going to try to do some sort of feedback about the Gitas, and I'd like to encourage her to do that and encourage you to also give her the feedback for us to learn, and encourages us as well, and so that we just get on with what we're doing. Actually, Karuna Bandar, have you got anything like you'd like to say?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anything you'd like to share? Any experiences?
I would like to thank you very much for this beautiful seminar and giving us so much knowledge about the Bhagavad Gita. Maybe while reading, we get confused or we miss certain points, but by hearing, we learn more. So it's very important to listen, also read, also. But for me, especially, I prefer to hear.
Yeah, no, I'd like to thank you, actually. It's very encouraging because you're ever present, and your contribution is always really sweet. So thank you very much. So shall we go into the... Oh, I was going to do one more thing, if devotees don't mind, just a couple of minutes. This is for tomorrow, because tomorrow is the start of a very, very important month. And I think if we just spend a couple of minutes just to encourage devotees to think about something that they can take on in this month. It can be very simple, doesn't have to be a huge endeavor, but something is better than nothing. So this is the vrat. It's something that is worth taking on because it will please Krishna. And Krishna actually says, whoever takes a vrat on, their karmas will be destroyed, which is amazing. I haven't really heard that so much, that you can do something and get rid of your karmas. Generally, and I remember Guru Maharaj saying this, You've done something wrong, you're going to pay the price. You've done something good, you're going to get the reward. But in this situation, Krishna is actually saying, I'll burn up. Now, here he is. One who observes Purushottam Vrat will burn up the reactions of his bad karma and attain the mercy of Radha and Krishna. So I'd like to encourage devotees, don't have to do all of these or any of them, but you may want to. So early bath, celibacy, rising early in the Brahma Muhurta hour, doing extra rounds. If you're not doing any rounds, it's a good time to start doing a round or two of the Mahamantra. Meditate on the form, the qualities, and also the pastimes of the Lord. Offer a ghee lamp every day. Takes 2 minutes. Fantastic. Do arti, parikram of Tulsi. Offer Radha Krishna flowers and Tulsi if you have. Read the 15th chapter every day. We are going to do that every single day, but in the evening satsang, we will do that every single day. Sing Jai Radha Madhav. So we will try to do these bhajans. Karuna Bandhari is already training herself for some very nice bhajans that we're going to do during this month. Take a vow to remain peaceful and truthful. Peaceful. So Jayanti did say that doesn't include fighting, punching, a punch up. So if I have a black eye or two, you know why. Not to blaspheme devotees, Brahmins, cows, saints. Try your best to please Radha and Krishna by performing some austerity. Reduce eating. That's a good one. Don't break the vow. That's a good one, yeah. Don't break the vow in the middle of the month. Reduce eating. I think that's one which I think everybody can get into the practice of doing something there. If we were eating 5 meals, reduce it down to 4, like that. And observe the Ekadashi. These 2 Ekadashi are very powerful. Offer some charity. Bathe in the holy rivers. And that we can do as a mental exercise. Or if you got some Gangajal, put it on your head every day.
Yes. So. This thing about breaking the vow, some people might think, I don't want to start something and then break the vow. So maybe you can just say to deities or whatever, I'll do this for a week. At least, you've done that sankalpa. And then after the week, if you think you can carry on, then you can say, okay, I'll do it for another week. So you're not actually breaking the vow in the middle of the month.
Good. Yeah, like that one. Nice one. That's a good point. So how about it, devotees? You don't have to tell anybody. In fact, it's better to keep it secret, the vratas. But certainly I'd like to encourage devotees, take on something. Okay, so thank you very much. Shall we do the Nishinga Kavach?